Thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me to come speak. My name is Michael Stebner. I am the chef at Sweetgreen. Normally when I do these sorts of things, I have a knife and a cutting board, and I'm just telling people how to make something. So bear with me. I probably should have brought some salads. Maybe would have gotten your attention a little bit more. And gloves, sure. But just a little bit about me first. I've been a chef now for 29 years. I started when I was 4 years old. But really, I have been cooking for a very, very long time. I started cooking in hotels in the late 80s and worked in hotels mostly through the 90s. Owned my own restaurant for a period of time in San Diego. I left there and I worked for a large restaurant company based in Phoenix, and we opened a concept called True Food Kitchen. I was the head chef at the very first True Food Kitchen and got to work with Dr. Andrew Weil for about 8 years. He was co-owner, or is co-owner of True Food Kitchen. So we developed a menu that was really based on the idea that healthy food can still be delicious. And I learned everything I know about health and healthy cooking during that time working with Dr. Andrew Weil. So I'm a little bit biased when it comes to the idea of healthy cooking. And now, being with Sweetgreen now for about 4.5 years, I think what I bring to that company is sort of this full service restaurant mentality, and Sweetgreen is a fast food chain. Okay, we have 90 locations. We were based in Washington, D.C. The company is 11 years old. Based in Washington, D.C. up until about 2.5 years ago. We moved our headquarters to Culver City, California, which is where I live. That's where our headquarters and my test kitchen and most of our testing happens. But Sweetgreen was started by 3 college guys that were going to school at Georgetown. So if you do the math, 11 years, I'm working for 3 guys that are 32 years old, and which was a nice change. But really, Sweetgreen is, in my mind, a food innovation and tech company that just happens to serve food, that just happens to use food as its vehicle. A little bit about Sweetgreen. It's a very interesting company, and again, coming from a full-service background of cooking and being a chef, and going to work for a company that specializes in salads was a leap of faith. When I met the founders of the company, they were all 28 years old, and I remember very clearly my interview process with them. They reached out to me, and they said, "We want to meet you. We want to talk to you about this new position." They didn't have a chef. They were a 7-year-old company. They didn't have a chef. We want a chef, and we want somebody that knows healthy food. So you're the guy that we want. So meet at one of our apartments in Washington, and we'll have a nice dinner, and we'll get to know you, etc. So I show up at their apartment, and me being a little bit naive, I guess, I show up at Nick Chamet's apartment, and he invites me in, and there's 7 or 8 people there, and he's like, "So we went to the farmer's market, we bought a bunch of stuff, but we don't know what to do with it. Would you mind making us dinner?" And I was like, I can't believe I didn't figure that out. They're sort of like, anytime as a chef you go to get a new job, you have to cook. Like that's kind of what happens. They sort of bamboozled me into cooking them dinner. I guess the dinner went pretty well, but it was a fun experience, and it kind of gives a picture of what this company is all about. We're a company with a mission. Our mission is to build healthier communities by connecting people to real food. Okay, it sounds a little weird for a fast food chain, but that's really what our mission is, and everything that we do sort of bubbles up to that idea. We have a food ethos. Our food ethos, which I don't know by heart because it's a little longer than that, but our food ethos basically says that the choices that we make every day, the foods that we eat, have a direct effect on ourselves, the community around us, and the planet. And our food ethos at Sweetgreen is literally our guardrail. When we're innovating the menu, everything has to fit into what our food ethos tells us. And it really is our ethos. The way we categorize our ingredients, the foods that we serve, we rank them on a scale based on sustainability, based on health. And every item that we bring into the back of our restaurant is graded between a 1 and a 3. 1 being, we have one product that's a 1 on the scale. So it's not that healthy, it's not that sustainable, it's not locally sourced, and that is kosher salt. So a 1 being sort of the low end of the spectrum for us, a 3 being something that we source locally, that's a whole ingredient, that's really good for you, that's sustainable. Our average score, when you take the 75 plus products that we bring into our restaurants, which isn't very many if you're in the restaurant business, our average score is about a 2.4. So it's something that I'm very, very proud of. It is a little constraining when you're the guy who's in charge of innovating the menu, having these sort of guardrails. I said it a little bit earlier about Dr. Andrew Weil, and I'm assuming some of you are familiar with him. And one of the things that he would talk about, and I think he talked about for years and years before he ever opened a restaurant, was healthy food doesn't have to taste like crap. It can actually be delicious. And when you think about the sort of societies in our world that are the healthiest, they also have the best food. The Mediterranean diet, some of the diets in the Asian world, they're healthy, craveable, and delicious. Those are some of the tenets that we try to follow at Sweetgreen. The next one is seasonality. We are a fast food chain. We have 90 locations. We have almost 30 locations in the DC area. That's where we were based. We have 20 locations in New York City. We have locations in Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco, LA. Next year, we're opening our first locations in Houston, Texas, and we have a few new markets on the horizon in the South. Miami, and Atlanta's on the short list. But to have a seasonally evolving menu in a company like ours with 90 locations, obviously a very small restaurant company in the grand scheme of things, 90 locations nationwide, sourcing seasonal products and having a seasonally evolving menu is very difficult. Trying to source from local providers, local farmers, very difficult. We have over 300 local farmers that we use across our country. So to give you a little snapshot of how this all sort of plays out at Sweetgreen, our food and beverage department is split between our supply chain side and our culinary side. I'm obviously in charge of our culinary side. It's myself, the chef, and another chef, R&D, Caitlin. So there's 2 chefs. On the supply chain side, we have 9 people. We have farm liaisons who work on both coasts and basically drive around in their Priuses, meeting farmers and trying to find good partners for us to partner up with for our seasonal menu and our core menu. We have one of those on each coast. We spend a lot more time getting the best possible ingredients in the back doors of our stores than I do trying to manipulate them when they come in. So I always say my job is to exercise restraint. I'm going to go through these slides one way or another. When at Sweetgreen, there's a good example of a bowl that we would serve at Sweetgreen. That's called the shrumami. That's a vegan bowl. It has our wild rice in it. It has tofu. It has mushrooms, cucumbers, and a miso sesame dressing. But when we talk about innovating at Sweetgreen, we are, like I said, a tech company. So sort of by definition, we have to be disrupting things, especially because of the guys that I work for. They wouldn't have it any other way. Sourcing the way we do and getting the ingredients that we do is definitely not the norm for fast food. And I will apologize in advance if I offend anybody, because I'm saying things that, again, we're a disruptive company. The idea is that we're giving people something that they want, and we're making the world a better place at the same time. So the way we do innovation at Sweetgreen, and this is, again, sort of going back to that full service mentality, we obviously start with insights and data. We have quite a bit of digital penetration at Sweetgreen. We do about 45% of our business over the phone. So our menu is available online. You can order and customize your salads on the app, walk into a store, and it'll be waiting there for you. So about 45% of our guests use Sweetgreen in that way. We think that number has been climbing year over year for the last couple of years since we introduced online ordering. We're quickly moving into delivery in 2019, and we think that number is going to keep going up. The best thing about that is the data is very rich. We know exactly who you are. We know exactly what you ate. We know your habits and your trends. So we have all this really rich data that we use when we're innovating the menu. The reason I put that funny red arrow in there, also let me put a caveat in. I'm not a big PowerPoint person. My 10-year-old daughter Flynn is kind of a whiz when it comes to Google slides and documents, so she helped me with this. But there was one condition, and I'll explain that later. But she helped me with this, so she helped me with the arrow. The reason I put that arrow there is because of what I was talking about with our sourcing. Our sourcing leads the innovation. Those farm liaisons that are out driving around in their Priuses and Outbacks, meeting farmers, are coming to me a couple times a month and saying, this is what we can use. This is what is out there. And for sourcing to lead ideation never happens in the restaurant business. It always starts with the idea, and then you have to go out and find the ingredients. It's a very backwards way of doing things. I always describe myself as an Italian grandmother. Italian grandma gets up in the morning with no preconceived idea of what she's going to make for dinner. She goes to the market, and she gets whatever is perfect and beautiful. That defines the menu for the night. Not getting up in the morning and saying, oh, I want to make XYZ with fava beans. I need to go find fava beans at the market. Going to the market, lo and behold, there's no fava beans because it rained or whatever happened. So we really, really let the sourcing lead the ideation. And again, that is very rare. Once we ideate, really my job is to cook. They sort of keep me locked in the basement. And my job is to come up with new and improved products all the time using these sort of pillars, this sourcing pillar, obviously the pillar of health. I'm not doing, s'mores and things like that. We're not doing unhealthy food. But they sort of keep me locked in the basement, coming up with new ideas. My job is literally 2 days a week to put food in front of our founders and to see what we can start testing. My test kitchen is adjacent to one of our locations in Culver City. And I think that's a very, very important part of our ideation process. When I come up with something and we all agree that it's delicious, we can quickly start testing it in that location. And that process takes about a week. Again, we don't want to have this long runway where we're talking about things that we want to start testing next fall. We're talking about things on Tuesday, we're testing them the following Thursday, getting those products into our stores in front of our guests. One of the important things and one of the things to remember about Sweetgreen is we're a scratch cooking facility. All the ingredients that come into our stores are whole ingredients. So we have a staff in every location that's making the salad dressing every day. We have 8, 9 different salad dressings at any given time that's cooking the whole grains, that's chopping the kale and the lettuce and washing the vegetables and slicing the beets. We spend, again, a lot of time preparing this food because it is coming in the back door as whole ingredients. So we quickly come up with these ideas, again, based on the sourcing of these ingredients and start testing them there in Culver City. We have a few different sort of layers of testing. The second layer of testing is moving it into other stores, obviously, which we'll test in 4 or 5 stores nationwide. And then quickly after that, we're introducing a new item to the menu. Because we have a seasonally changing menu, it changes 5 times a year. Again, based on the seasons, we accept the fact that there's 2 summers, especially in the Northeast, because there's so much bounty available. We don't want to have peaches and strawberries and peppers and corn happening at the same time. We spread that into 2 seasons. But the menu literally changes every 2.5 months. Why do whole grains fit in at Sweetgreen? I think whole grains at Sweetgreen are, we didn't put whole grains on the menu because somebody told us to put whole grains on the menu. They just make sense with whole food cooking. The whole grains that we do use are quinoa and a wild rice blend. The wild rice blend that we get comes from a farm here in California called Lumberg. You guys here? Anybody here from Lumberg? Okay, good. Awesome. We love Lumberg. I was lucky enough to go out to the farm a couple of years ago. Actually, it's probably been like 4 years ago now. Meet the family and see what you guys are doing. We are also using your quinoa in California, I believe, and trying to become a domestic-only user of quinoa, which I think is exciting. It's really up to you guys. But those are the 2 whole grains that we use. We actually just launched a really cool collaboration with Chef Dan Barber from Blue Hill that actually launched last Thursday. And we're using toasted buckwheat as sort of a crunch addition to a warm bowl and an appetizer that we worked with Dan Barber to produce. The second thing is healthy. We talked a little bit about that. I think for anything to be on the menu at Sweetgreen, it has to be good for you. When you're starting with whole ingredients, when you're cooking from scratch, the only thing you can do to make something not healthy is to start adding unhealthy things to it. As long as we don't do that, we continue to cook healthy food. Well-sourced. I can't really express enough how important sourcing is and how important the quality of the base ingredient is for us. Because our food is so clean, we're basically just cooking the quinoa. We're not adding a bunch of stuff to it to make it magically taste better. We have to start with the best possible base ingredients. Again, that's very disruptive in the fast food world. The fast food world does the opposite. We keep adding things until it actually tastes like something good. Sorry again if that hurts anybody's feelings. Customizable. We have a signature menu at Sweetgreen. Like I said, we have a seasonal menu, we have warm bowls, we have salads. We're actually introducing side dishes. We are working on plates. But at the end of the day, everything has to be customizable. You have to be able to interchange things. So having something with a very specific flavor profile outside of like a salad dressing or a sauce doesn't necessarily work for us. It has to be flexible in that way. Quick cooking. Again, we're doing all this cooking there in our restaurants. If you've ever been to a Sweetgreen, it's like a kitchen with a cash register. That's the way I describe it. You walk in, there's the kitchen. You see the chefs and cooks back there cooking. And it's exciting, and it feels fresh, and it feels healthy. But we can't spend like 4 hours braising something and trying to keep up with our lunch business. I should mention that Sweetgreen is our locations are very busy. If you've ever waited in line, again, that's a good reason to download the app and just order online. But very, very busy, and we have a location in New York at Bryant Park that produces 750 salads per hour, which is an amazing amount of food. That restaurant goes through 13 or 14 cases of kale every single day. So it's a mountain of food coming in. Again, these are whole foods too, so big boxes, bulky, and then we're having to like strip the kale off the stems, wash it, spin it, chop it. There's a lot of activity. and approachable. I think the lady that was speaking before me was talking about trends and things like that, and I think it's very important that our food be on trend, but also that people understand it. With healthy food, you're sort of up against something that is an unspoken out there, when you're trying to produce healthy food. I talked a lot about the importance of sourcing. That's our mission there, building healthier communities by connecting people to real food. Oh, and there is the reason, the caveat to my daughter helping me with my slides. She had to put a picture of a puppy on this slide. That's exactly, and it's not even our puppy, but whatever. It's just a canned picture from the internet. Again, quality first, flavor, and partnership. We talk about the different sources that we use, the different farms that we use. We go to a new market. Our whole food and beverage team spent a week in Houston a year before we opened our first location there. We haven't opened it yet, but we were there last summer. Meeting farmers, going to farmers markets, making connections with our sources, so that when we show up there, we know where to get the right food. It's very, very important. Those partners are the most important part of our business. Those farmers, the people that produce the food that we use, are very, very important to us. I'm okay on time. And finally, the future of Sweetgreen. And a lot of this is actually coming from our collaboration with Chef Dan Barber. If anybody is familiar with Dan Barber, he wrote one of the best books I've ever read. It's called The Third Plate. I can't recommend it enough. It's great, great book. And he's a great chef. He's a little, I don't know how to describe him. He's definitely like in his own head. And just very, very smart and knows exactly what he wants to do. Not the easiest person to collaborate with on a nationwide dish, but it was very rewarding. And I got to spend some time with one of the best chefs in America, which is always exciting for me. But I really feel that the future of whole grains at Sweetgreen are going to be these partnerships. We have a lot of local farms that are growing our produce for us. Is there farmers here? I hope there's farmers here. One? Okay. Don't be embarrassed. You're the most important people here. There's only 3 of you. Sorry. Soil health is important to growing good products. Cover crops are an integral part of soil health. What we're trying to do, and we don't even know if we can do this, and you farmers can grab me afterwards and tell me I'm crazy, but what we would love to do is buy our bell peppers from this farmer, and then also buy the buckwheat or the cowpeas that he's growing on that land to keep his soil healthy the 2 or 3 or 4 seasons that he's not actually growing peppers, he or she growing peppers on that land. Again, maybe it's a lofty, novel idea or dream, but it would be really cool if we were actually using these products that were the output of cover cropping. That's one of our goals. Like I said, we used buckwheat with the Dan Barber collaboration. I don't know if the buckwheat that we used was meant to be a cover crop or if it was just grown as buckwheat. But I think there's something exciting about, first and foremost, letting people know what's going on. Like, I don't think the average consumer understands what it takes to grow something good. And I think when we start the conversation about what cover crops are and what they mean, I think it's some excitement will happen, some exciting things will happen. So I'm actually looking forward maybe to talking to somebody about sorghum, because we've gotten a lot of these grains into the test kitchen. We get Bob's people. Okay, hi. You guys send us a lot of stuff, and I cook it, and we're always trying to figure out how to use it. Sorghum is something that our farm liaisons are constantly asking me to work with, And every time I cook it, I'm like, I don't know, it's not doing it for me. So I would love some input from the sorghum people about how we could integrate some of these, I would say, uber healthy whole grains into our food.